your taking the time and investment in us and sharing the information as well as insights and different perspectives. So we do appreciate you here today. Next up, we have Annamaria Falzarano. Okay, should have said it faster. I would have been fine. She is the coordinator of World Languages in the Greece Central School District. She earned a bachelor's degree in Spanish from St. John Fisher College, a second New York State certification in the Italian languages, and a Master's of Arts degree in Liberal Studies from SUNY Brockport. In her role as coordinator of World Languages, Annamaria plans and facilitates professional development for Lot and Essel and departments at the Greece Central School District to align instruction to Common Core learning standards. Annamaria was awarded a scholarship for overseas study at the University of Madrid, Spain, and she was honored by the local Italian American community by being named the Italian American Community Center Woman of the Year for Education for 2013. She is a member. She is also a member of Kappa Delta Psi Honor Society. So we're going to just immediately welcome her and allow her to get into her presentation today. And thank you for coming.
Good morning, everyone, and it is indeed a pleasure to be here with all of you today as a member of AAUW. I think the work of this organization is admirable, and I'm very proud to say that I'm a member of this organization. I hope to share with you today some insights about one lens regarding the Common Core learning standards from the Greece Central School District perspective. And thank you, Michael, for laying such a wonderful foundation for us this morning. I think it was very comprehensive, very balanced, very objective. I'm sure if you read the newspapers, you are very well aware that there's quite a bit of controversy around this topic. I think there are some folks who are sounding the alarm, but I think you'll see from, hopefully from our perspective in Greece Central, that with some education and communication, we have managed to avoid the major pitfalls that have come before other local districts. That's not to say that our efforts were easily achieved. It's still very hard work, and I will share more of that information with you as we proceed. So here we are today, year 2 in the Greece Central School District, and as I just mentioned briefly, it did not come without a lot of hard-fought gains as we began to grapple with what is Common Core and how is it going to look in the Greece Central School District. We've had our challenges, to be sure. We continue to grow, but we also see some positive movement in our community, with our parents, with our students, with our teachers and administrators. So hopefully today you'll be able to get a better sense of where we are in terms of Common Core in year 2. To give you a little bit of context, I thought it might be helpful for people to know a little bit about the Greece Central School District. And you can see we are geographically a suburban district, but with a very urban profile. So our needs are great. And if you can think about a classroom in the highest level, think of a district as the very big classroom, there's a great need to differentiate. And I think that answers someone's question earlier about math. How do you get to kids who are struggling, and yet the standard is the standard? I would challenge and say that the instruction needs to be looked at in terms of differentiation for those students in the classroom, and it really all does stem from assessment. So again, many of the things we've already heard this morning are not necessarily rocket science, but it does bear witness to the fact that we need to be purposeful in our work, and assessments are one way to get there. We need to start with some solid data and then move forward to help meet the needs of our students. If you take a look, we are the 9th largest district in New York State, so with that comes a lot of responsibility, a lot of need, and I will say also a lot of resources. Every day I'm very grateful to be a part of the Greece Central School District because of the role that I play, I'm able to implement change that smaller districts maybe just don't have the need or the resources, and sometimes, quite honestly, larger districts struggle because they are so big. So our size really helps us in many ways for some of our more diverse learners. And again, that question came up too in terms of how do we get, and I think some of the data point that Michael shared, you know, when you start looking at students with disabilities, my lens is with English language learners. What does that look like in terms of Common Core when the bar is the bar? And I keep mentioning that to folks. We aren't lowering the bar. We've never lowered the bar, but how will we get our children there? In the context of, we have 11,500 students enrolled this year in grades K through 12. We have 1,500 faculty, staff, and administrators. That's a very large team, and that includes teaching staff, teaching assistants, monitors, anyone that's supporting our students' instruction directly. That's a big number. 17 school buildings, 730 classrooms, we actually did a count. 38 to 40 different languages are spoken throughout our district in any year. Sometimes it might be one or two in that language group. Hispanic families are number one, followed by Arabic. Those are for number 1 and 2. And a great stratification of languages in our district currently. Also, I thought it would be important for you to see that we have a 44% free and reduced lunch rate. Michael also talked about the impact of poverty on the educational system. And I would say that, yes, it's a factor, but it's not one that cannot be overcome. And again, with my English language learners, if you look at it from that lens, when you take a look at free and reduced poverty, I have students who are, 77% of our kids are free and reduced lunch eligible if you are an English language learner. So not only do they come in academically at risk, but they also are coming in what we would consider poverty. I would challenge that there are different types of poverty, and it is up to the school systems to figure out how do we best meet those needs. So again, Greece very much a suburban geographically, but we do have quite a range of needs as well as resources. So I put this out there for you to take a look at this image. Have you ever felt this way when you've taken on a new project or a task that seemed kind of insurmountable? So this is an airplane. It's a loft. It looks like it's barely making it, but it's there. It has a little landing gear in case we have to make a water landing. So I kind of like to use this as an analogy for where we are in year 2 in Greece Central. So I heard this analogy quite often, and actually this was a slide that was used a lot in year 1, that implementation was like flying the plane while you're building it. I'm sure we all feel that way sometimes with the new requirements that are being placed upon us every day, and it doesn't mean just in education, but in any realm. You're flying the plane as you're building it. Well, our plane is in the air. We're not building it. It's steady, and we've made some preparations for a landing or to make some adjustments along the way. So I did want to honor the fact that I think if you hear it statewide, building the plane as you're flying it, we're not quite there. We've lifted, but we also have some preparations in place in case we need to make some modifications along the way. So this is sort of an image of what we're like in year 2. So hopefully you had that similar experience and can empathize with us, again, given the context of the size of our district and also the challenges of Common Core, as again Mike so well put forth to us this morning. So for us, at the highest level, how do you move a system when people are at various starting points? Remember, there's 1,500 people, variety of backgrounds, variety of understandings about education. People are embedded and wedded to the Apple unit, as Michael mentioned. How do we move and encourage people to embrace this and really operationalize this into their practices when it really is quite a shift from the current practices that people might have been following? So again, in a very big sense, how might you, and again I would put this to the audience here, what might you think would be one way to move people who are at various different points? Again, think of a project you've worked on, an event you planned for. How do you get people to move? And I'll just take a couple thoughts. Does anybody have an idea? What would be something you would do to bring people on board? Is there any thoughts? What might work? Yes?
Communication is key.
Absolutely. Communication, having clear expectations. People know what's expected. People are different starting points. What do you think would help get people what they need? Someone's really well versed in a skill and someone maybe not so much. What might you need? Yes?
Mentorship.
Mentorship, what else? I saw the hand.
Collaboration.
And collaboration, absolutely. And I'm so happy to hear you say that because hopefully you'll see that some of the reasons why we have felt that we've had the lift in year 2 is for those very reasons that you have identified. So we said that our solution is to create an environment in which everyone's input and expertise is valued as it relates to the Common Core. Big answer, big ideas. So how do we unpack this? And you'll hear the word unpack a lot as well this morning from me. How do you get at this level of understanding when people are in all different places along the spectrum of Common Core adoption? And it does come with communication and mentorship and all, as we've mentioned. So in a nutshell, for us, and again, I give you this by way of context with the Suburban lens, is that in Greece, we grappled with the what, then focused our attention on the how, so that we could better understand the why of Common Core as we move forward on the pathway. And earlier this morning, Michael quoted Bill Daggett, who I've had the pleasure of seeing a few times make presentations. And I saw him 2 years ago, just as Common Core was being unrolled, and I was just totally amazed and blown away by some of the figures that Michael shared, and also some of the things that he did say at that setting that I thought, my goodness, what will we do in the state of education in our country? Because those results were pretty alarming, to say the least. And at that time, we talked about Common Core at that moment felt like it was being pushed upon us. People were fighting back, pushing back, and I believe the reason was that we never really got the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? I think we jumped to the what, like this is what the curriculum is or the standards are, but like Mike said, they're not interchangeable, the curriculum and the standards. But then the how was really left up to districts. And until you know why you're doing something, it's really a challenge to figure out the plan if you don't know why you're doing what you're doing. But in year 2, we are definitely on the path to college and career ready with our kids because we have figured out the what. We have some solid methodologies, and we have some, the hows have become more clear to us, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. Because really, if you're going to begin a project like Common Core, you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. And for us, we cycled back to beginning with the end in mind. Like any good planning, if you begin with the end in mind, for us, the end goal is that college and career readiness. So we referenced the creating the pathway, the Regents Reform Agenda. And if you can see, it's very synergistic. Every gear is working along with others together. We have the standards, which is the Common Core standards. That's our basis. We are very much data-driven. I hope to impart that on you today, that data is essential if you're going to make gains in Common Core. And the teachers. And for us, this came in at a time when their performance review was coming in also as a change to how they were being evaluated, teachers. So all of this was working together. And again, back to how do you get those gains? It really, really depends on communication and education. So you can see, keeping in mind that visual, the gears that are in place. I also would like to share with you too that these are not the only templates that we've been working on in Greece Central. We have many, many, and it was really a challenge to figure out which template would be best to express to you how we operate. Our big model within our district is Envision Greece 2017. So that's our strategic plan, and embedded in all of that are ways that we're going to get to that college and career readiness with our students. Our mantra is one vision, one team, one Greece. That leads to that everybody being on the same team. The gears are all working together. That doesn't happen magically, though. It takes a lot of work, mentorship, communication, and education to get to that point. So I just wanted to share that with you, that there are other systems working beneath these systems, if you will, of the reform agenda within our district. So Mike, again, referenced this a little bit. So what is college and career ready? And this is so true. I think we hear college, but we don't want to overlook the fact that a lot of children are going to go directly into careers, some employment. but yet we need to provide them with the skills to have them be ready for that market. And that's again too some of the facts that Bill Daggett had shared and that Michael shared earlier too, that our children are largely, a good percent of them are not employable at this moment based on the education system that they are currently moving through. Not to say that Common Core is the complete answer, but it does get us on a path, again, to helping to even the playing field so that people have a common understanding about education. How districts choose to do that, however, is the magic bullet, and that's where I think a lot of districts are struggling and finding their way. And as I said, we are making our way as well. So with this as our goal, Greece Central has moved forward using our own framework, and I mentioned those various frameworks. But what would we use as resources, and how would we get there? So our curriculum that we've begun to use at grades K through 2, we partially implemented core knowledge, and this year all of our elementary buildings are following that model. At grades 3 through 8, we are using the expeditionary learning modules, and we've been unpacking the standards based upon that understanding about learning. It is heavily embedded with the content. I think you can rest assured that ELA obviously is well represented, but the sciences and the social studies understandings are also embedded in that. The children are being held to much higher standards of learning and understanding, deeply rigorous. But at this moment, I would ask you to pause and think about the English language learners who come to our schools. Not only are they learning their new language, but they are also having to deal with the content they may not have had. One of the key hallmarks of Common Core is the protocols that children get used to following, sort of a lingo and a rhythm about this. Our whole first year was spent helping teachers understand what the protocols were and how to instruct, and then sharing that with the children. That takes a lot of time. Again, 730 classrooms, 17 buildings, 1,500 staff members. That doesn't happen overnight. But with proper education and resources and support, we are in a much stronger place than we were just a year ago. So again, keeping that lens on our English language learners, it is quite a task to get everybody to move at different starting points. And for grades 9 through 12, we are working through the Odell units, and we are also following the math modules as set forth by the curriculum, by the national curriculum. We were in a better place with math because we had been following those standards for a few years prior to Common Core, so for us the shift wasn't as great for math, but for ELA certainly that balance of fiction and nonfiction, attention to text, etc. was really important. So what did our implementation look like? So if you look at the curriculum, that to me was the what. Remember I said we grappled with the what? So we have the what. We have what we're working on. The implementation for me is the how. How did we get there? And this is my own iteration, the 4 C's. For me, I'm thinking about communication, collaboration that someone mentioned earlier too, community, and common evaluation. So, and take a look. Common, the word, the base of root words, because I'm all things language. Common, commune, collaborate means to work together. Co-labor is the base of that word. A community and common. And how interesting, we're here to talk about Common Core. So these are the things that, just by my oversight of looking at what was our process, how did we get there, these are the things that have surfaced. So for communication, it was essential that we communicated to all the stakeholders in our district what was the Common Core to the best of our understanding, and how would we help people get there. It's one thing to say this is an expectation, and as any good teacher knows, unless you model and help and give people the tools that they need to be successful, it's going to be an even greater challenge. We launched our Common Core, year 2 began last summer with our 2-week Summer Leadership Academy. We had professional developers coming from New York City. We had leadership training, administrators, and teacher leaders. We were awarded the Teacher Leader Grant, the Style Grant. We just were awarded the 3rd year of that, which gives us resources to help build capacity with our classroom teachers. They are relieved for part of the day to help other teachers with the Common Core and understandings. So it's an in-house kind of a system. And again, think about a framework. We have district leadership, and we also have teachers working alongside us to get this work done so that it's seamless as it is delivered to the children in the classrooms. We did have experts in the field come to lead some development. We had folks from Expeditionary Learning come, Core Knowledge. Sometimes it was after school, sometimes we had release days, partial release days, half day, where teachers would meet from all of our different buildings to come together, which again, too, the communication, sometimes you can feel so isolated in the work if it's new and it's uncomfortable, but we're trying to ease that by allowing people to come together and giving them time to work on it. Our monthly administrator meetings, we meet once a month, is all leadership. There are 65 administrators in Greece, school principals and coordinators like myself, and every month we would unpack a different standard so we could turnkey that to our folks in our departments and buildings, so again, to keep that system running. We held parent meetings throughout the school year, and we also shared our expectations with the students. You know, they're our customers. They're the ones that are at the end game of all this, and they understand the language too. That all takes a lot of time and effort. The collaborative piece, we do honor our BOCES, and I'm sorry Mike's not here to hear this, but we do rely on our BOCES folks quite a bit. BOCES 2 in particular for Greece, but I also frequently visit BOCES 1 to get resources, to share information. It's quite a big system, and we are appreciative of that. BOCES 2 did send folks out, teams of teachers and supports to our buildings, especially in year 1, so that we would have a more productive year 2 to get us launched. We had other folks, and I would include myself in this category, to help unpack those modules with a lens on diverse learners, students with disabilities, as well as for students whose English is not their first language. Very important. All the learning strategies, the resources that I'm hoping to provide. I just purchased a book called the Common Core for the Not So Common Learner. There's a book for K-5 and one for 6-12 to help ESL teachers and student with disability teachers take a look at what the bar is the bar. How are we going to get there? And so these are ways providing resources, book studies to help people understand that a little bit. And then we also, we were totally frequent flyers to Albany, to the Network Team Institute. We would send teams of 6 to 8, 10 people every time the NTI Institute was offered. I happened to go this summer because there was a special focus on English language learners. I'm so proud of New York State Ed because they really do such a fine job and are really, really supporting us in making use of all the, and it's good for us to make use of all of those resources that are available, but we are always sending teams to the NTIs as well. So we are looking to collaborate with people outside of our district and relying on their expertise to help us move forward. The community piece, you can't move without our parents, and I guess one of the other facts I didn't mention, demographics, is Greece is a community of 90,000 people, and we have approximately 11 or 12,000 students in our schools. We have about 30,000 parents. And they're wonderful families with our district, a lot of needs to be sure, but they want to know what's best for their kids, and we do our best to inform. We have made PTA presentations to their council meetings, and we also had a district-wide meeting last March for all the high school parents to attend at one of our high schools, Athena High School. And so we are opening our doors literally and figuratively to our families. We also have items posted on our Greece website with links to Engage New York. Again, everyone's on a spectrum. Some families will get that right away, and sometimes other families need to hear it 1 or 2 more times before it starts to make sense. But quite honestly, we have gotten very few comments from families because I do think they've gotten the opportunity to ask questions and are trusting in the system that we're moving forward with. The other piece that I think cannot be overlooked is at a time when everyone's being measured, the district's passing rates, teacher performance, administrators' performances are linked to the teacher performances in school buildings. This was a pretty crazy time, to be sure. We have all new things, and oh, by the way, you're going to be measured on all of this. So a little bit of pressure there for all of us, to be sure. But each of our evaluative tools and rubrics are linked, and I think there's power in that. We are basically, administrators are saying to teachers, we're in this with you, and we are being measured in the same way, the percent passing and how much of your score is based on student performance. Well, for an administrator, your score is based on how well your school and your teachers are doing. So we all have an interest in doing what's best for our children, of course. But the common standards, the common curriculum, and data being our common denominator, I think has really been the power behind us being able to move forward. And that interpersonal accountability is inherent. Michael also mentioned earlier about content areas. We are very much aware about Common Core learning standards for all areas of content. I, for one, also represent the foreign language department, language other than English, and the shifts are there for us as well. We are changing our writing samples to align to Common Core. If any of you remember a Regents or a proficiency exam from the foreign language, the writing sample would be a prompt with maybe 6 or 7 bullets. You may wish to include ... Now we're asking children to read a prompt in Spanish or Italian or French, and then write a response to the prompt based on that information. So it's the same, and we're working on that right across the board. That's an initiative that I'm taking on with the foreign language team this year. So it's evident, and it makes sense for kids. They're hearing it in math, they're hearing it in science, they're hearing it in their foreign language class, in PE. So it really makes sense, and it really does help when everybody's on the same page, so to speak. So some reflections and results. And again, this echoes very clearly what Michael had said earlier too. Our implementation plan allowed us to delineate between standards, curriculum, and assessments. Curriculum and the standards are not one and the same, but our process allowed us to see the differences and how each one of those pieces has a role to play. How do we modify our practices? And year 2 was a real change for us. We spent the summer leading into the year 2 looking at what we learned in year 1 and really took a hard look. And again, I'll speak to the lens from English language learners. I met with teams of teachers, and after you've been through it once, you know, it's like, oh, okay, that's what that means. So I can put more time here, maybe build in some steps so that my English language learners will get this. But I would contest to say that any struggling student is like an English language learner in that we have to build those staircases for them to get to where they need to be. And we continue to focus on the shifts. And because of this, it kind of took away some of the angst and true anxiety. And there was wailing and gnashing of teeth early on. I can guarantee we all sat through some pretty tough collegial circles for myself with our staff members because it was such challenging times, because we really didn't know. But now we're on that path. And here we are in year 2, and this is just recently released within our district, that teachers are reporting that the kids are actually enjoying the central text. They're really good pieces of literature. There are improvements in students' abilities to cite evidence from the text that they're reading. They're having rich discussions about their reading. There are improvements in the students' writing this year over last year, but it takes time. I'm thinking about that question that came earlier about the math. You know, for the kids who are in 10th, 11th grade, they haven't had benefit of all of this Common Core. But in 2 or 3 years, these children who are in 2nd and 3rd grade, wow, they're going to be superstars and reading at such a high level by the time they're in the junior and senior years. So there's that learning curve that has to occur. We're jumping on the merry-go-round while it's running, right? There's all these analogies, but that's exactly what it is. And there is also deeper understanding about math concepts. We're seeing a lot more thinking, deeper thinking about concepts than we had in the past. And so that takes us on our pathway to the future. So I hope I've shared with you some of the things that we've done in Greece that I believe have put us on that pathway to college and career ready for every student in our district.